Had a moment during the offering there. I don't know how many of you are good about reading the directions ahead of time before you start doing the job, right? Like you get the thing from IKEA and read the whole thing before you get the tool set up. Well, a few of us do that. And someone noticed that there is a error in the order of service later. So I'll call out the correct swing number to you when it's time. Just to know that I'm on it. This time. The world is a slippery sort of thing. And it can be hard to hold on to all of the many pieces of life. In our days on this earth, we may try new ideas, new plans, new relationships, careers, or places to live. No matter how many or how few sorts of things we devote our living to, we can be assured that not all of them are going to last. There is plenty of trial and error in life. That what was familiar and sustaining will sometimes pass away, and what is exciting and new and untested does not always endure for the long haul. Now, sometimes, despite our best efforts and finest intentions, some piece of the world proves too slippery for us to hold on to. In his unpublished essay, Why I Gave Up Zen, contemporary science journalist John Corrigan tells the story of his ill-fated attempt to take a course in Zen Buddhist meditation. Coming with hopes of developing a spiritual practice that would contribute to his overall well-being, he found himself constantly distracted by frustrations and that his internal critic could either ignore or cast aside. The chief among these frustrations, he admits, were the other people in the class with him. And the chief culprit was a person that he dubbed Cell Phone Man. So, Cell Phone Man carried a cell phone, as many of us do, and John knew this because he didn't turn it off at the start of the class. And it kept beeping, beep, beep. Cell Phone Man had other annoying habits as well. During the silent meditation, he would yawn and stretch, groan, and generally disturb the equanimity of the classroom environment. John found himself becoming constantly agitated and impatient with his classmate in a way that left him feeling terribly unzen. Eventually, John took his frustration and mental conflict about the class out in the snow with him, attempting to practice mindfulness while cross-country skiing. But even the cold simplicity of fresh fallen snow could not save him from his wandering mind. And all the sights and thoughts that intruded on him as he tried desperately to be here now. After berating himself repeatedly for stray thoughts as varied as his daughter's cold, his wife's social activism, and his curiosity about what sorts of animal tracks those were crossing the path in front of him, John finally gave up and decided not to go back to that class. Now, I'll insert a little note here. I think my friends and colleagues who are much more practiced and well-versed in meditation than I am would tell us that actually John was probably trying to reach something that he wasn't really thinking about properly, and if he approached it in a different way, he might have been more successful. But the point that I want to make to you is that it can be very hard to acknowledge to ourselves that some goal or some challenge, some want of ours is beyond our grasp. Even when the job just wasn't right for us, or the marriage just wasn't good for either of us, or that dream that we were following just wasn't going to lead us to a place that would make us happy. Even if we know in our minds that letting go is the right thing to do, it can be so hard and so painful to let go with our hearts. Yet our lives are not shaped only by what we release into the world. They are also defined by what we hold tightly to. Unitarian Universalism, the religion to which I was born, deeply values search, ongoing growth, the discovery of new ideas, thoughts, and perspectives. Often, we find that our free and responsible search for truth and meaning requires us to leave behind what is familiar, inherited, or traditional. A. Powell Davies, a leading figure in the 20th century Unitarian movement, described his faith with these words: "The religion that says freedom, freedom from ignorance and false belief, freedom from spurious claims and bitter prejudices, freedom to seek the truth, both old and new, and freedom to follow it, freedom from the hates and greeds that divide humankind and spill the blood of every generation, freedom for honest thought, freedom for equal justice, freedom to seek the true, the good, and the beautiful, with minds unimpaired by cramping dogmas and spirits uncrippled by abject dependence." Freedom, then, is our watchword, with its implications of escaping and leaving behind what is confining and restricting and limiting to life. We are called to the brave work of going out, of finding what is new and unfamiliar and questing for the truth, wherever it may lead. There are times when leaving where we are and letting go of what has been is necessary for growth, or for justice, or for peace, or simply for survival. Many of us, I know, have come to Unitarian Universalism by coming out of some other religious tradition and perhaps leaving it behind. Our faith urges us to seek far and wide for meaning that we reach beyond the bounds of what is known and familiar. This is a calling that founds new nations, new religions, one cherished by Unitarian Universalists and by our theological ancestors. But just as there is reason to celebrate letting go, there is also reason to honor holding fast, living with a persistent commitment to something larger than ourselves. We have a faith right now of joiners. If it were not for more than half of us who have come in by choice, made later in life, rather than entering by birth or upbringing, we could not be what we are. But it is not only the bravery to join that sustains this or any other religion. It is also the courage to stay. In our congregations and amongst ourselves, it is somewhat common to exchange tales of the faith that we left behind. For some of us, this is an opportunity to reveal and perhaps to start to heal some of the wounded places in our own heart. Places where there was something really painful in our past religious experience. But we are glad to be free of it. What I wish for, and what I would one day hope to see, are states of faith Unitarian Universalists, both joiners and like, who have had their hearts broken by this faith, even by this community, but who have nonetheless made the decision to stay, because there's still something worth holding on to here. Many things in life require persistence. The practice of religion, the exercise of citizenship, the construction and maintenance of an institution, such as a partnership, a family, or a congregation. All of these things, and many more, need lasting and abiding effort in order to endure. The institutions by which we define ourselves are only so strong and so permanent as the human commitments out of which they are made. To accomplish all of this requires tenacity. Now, I should not have to give a lecture on the virtues of patiently and persistently working towards a goal, even against long odds, to a room in which Red Sox fans predominate. But I'll give you another example. There is a traditional tattoo among sailors in the U.S. Navy. It is 2 words, 8 letters, painted across 4 fingers with each hand. Hold fast. The safe journey of a ship often depends on the strength and dedication of its crew in holding down or calling in this line or that. The message is a reminder that the common good of the boat relies on the embodied commitment of all those aboard. Some years ago, I received poignant instruction in what it means to hold fast to something beloved on a trip to New Orleans. 15 of us UUs went down and spent a week in the Crescent City, slinging paint and joint compound, hauling dirt, planting garden beds, and burying witness. Nearly 2 years later, when we were there, the body of New Orleans still retained the terrible wounds of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. I did not have the opportunity to visit that fair city before the storm, and seeing it when I did, as I did, was full of mixed emotions. The images of both beauty and anger to carry with me back home. One late afternoon, our group took a solemn tour of the lower Ninth Ward, a section of the city that was ignored by our national imagination, until the storms and their aftermath and the American media turned that neighborhood into a spectacle of desolation. The Ninth has been the heart of the working class black population of New Orleans for generations. Hit by the very worst of the catastrophic flooding in the late summer of 2005, it was almost uniformly flattened. Staring out at what used to be several acres of well-loved homes, I saw whole blocks of houses reduced to vacant lots. There were parts in the field where all you could see was concrete steps going up to nowhere. It is this sort of view that makes the soul grow coarse. To survey the consequences of a broken canal, wrought by human hands, ordered by human minds, uncaring of the risk to human lives who live beside the wall. Seeing all those broken houses stirred in me feelings of both anger and grief. Carrying those feelings with me still is one of the costs, one of the privileges of having made that journey south. But here is the lesson that I offer you from it today. Amidst the ruin and the rot and all the brokenness and empty spaces, there were a handful of these dingy white trailers provided by FEMA, rented from a private company, and used by pre-Katrina residents who had returned to the Gulf Coast to try to rebuild. In a neighborhood that was all but completely empty, largely devoid of the most basic services, water, electricity, any place to get food, the basic stuff of life. The people who were willing to